Hello, welcome to another episode of Forgotten Cemeteries, Pacific Northwest. Today we're at Bridal Veil Cemetery, located in the ghost town of Bridal Veil, Oregon, Multnomah County, and one of the most sought after postmarks, primarily due to the name for summer and spring brides who sent out their wedding invitations apparently, so that's kind of neat. Alternative names to the cemetery, there's none that I know of, so let's go meet some of the local residents and hear their story. A little bit of a history about this cemetery, and apologies, it's right next to the highway, so it's a little loud. I'm hiding behind this rock to drown out the noise. But we have an establishment year of 1879 with 25 to 100 burials per the Oregon Burial Site Guide. Find a Grave is claiming a later date of 1888, but I trust the Oregon Burial Site Guide for the most part. So far, 57 memorials have been added to Find a Grave, so it's a pretty tiny one. If true, I believe I saw the last burial here was 1938. Guess we'll find out during our tour. So a little under 100 years old since the last individual was buried here. This cemetery contains some of the earliest settlers in the area and another hidden gem in Oregon. The town Bridal Veil has an establishment date of 1866. Legend has it that while traveling on the Columbia River, a passenger on the sternwheeler named Bailey Gotzert saw Bridal Veil Falls and stated that it looked like a delicate, misty bride's veil. So apparently that's how it's got its name. People just began to call it Bridal Veil, Oregon, or Bride's Veil, Oregon. So the economy for the most part here was logging. More specifically, Bridal Veil Falls lumbering, which was pretty popular in the area from my readings. A town called Palmer would cut down trees and send down a log fume to Bridal Veil. In 1902, a fire would burn down the Palmer mill. A new mill would be constructed but shut down in 1936. The Great Depression was mainly the cause from my readings. However, Kraft started up operations here in 1937, the cheese company, because back then they made these popular wooden cheese boxes. So this is the lumber area, as we said. Bridal Veil was shut down for good in the 1960s, though I saw someone claim in a forum post they worked at a mill during the 1970s with a shutdown year of 1974. So pretty fond memories there of that individual. A town that came and went and now forgotten in time from my readings. There's old buildings, but I believe they are set to be torn down from 1999. You can venture deep into the forest of the large mountains because old relics of the lumber transferring system can be found if you're into that stuff and abandoned stuff for the most part. Unfortunately, I read this area as a hotspot for illegal dumping and people rolling cars in the Bridal Veil Creek apparently. This is like the only image I could find, but apparently it's a big issue around here. As far as our cemetery, almost met its end in a report from 1958 that stated the cemetery was in complete neglect, with blackberries covering the area with only 4 headstones visible. In 1964, the blackberries were cut back and, surprise, 31 headstones popped up with a bunch of unknown markers. Someone from Find a Grave actually posted a photo from 1980 of the cemetery. In the year 2000, 43 headstones were discovered. Not gonna lie, when I first started looking up the people here, I got like a little frustrated. I was like, there's not much here going on. However, I was surprised at what I found. We have mystery disappearances and the Shanghaied tunnel ties, and there's a plethora of young deaths here. Kind of maybe the most I've ever seen in my travels. We'll also learn about donkey steam engines and headstone symbolism here. One symbol on one of these headstones is new to us, so that'll be exciting. Well, as if it wasn't loud enough, now a train is driving by, so apologies, this might be a loud video. But here we have Dr. William Horton. I believe what was the earliest birth year listed on Find a Grave? Born in Ireland in 1814. Unsure when he came to Oregon. Only Hortons I could find coming to Oregon in 1852, but William wasn't listed. He was a physician in this area, though. Here is Emily Sarah Root Swain, born in 1855 in Missouri and a very late arrival to Oregon, coming in the year 1869 via wagon train. A little odd because in 1869 the first transcontinental railroad was complete, more specifically Pacific Railroad, which was safer, faster, and cheaper and only took 7 days, not 6 months like the old wagon trains. So not sure why. Maybe the train families wanted to go adventuring. I think this is an example of the young deaths I was talking about in the cemetery, and this is Arthur A. Smith in front of us, born in 1880 and died in 1908, so only 28 when he died. So part of my channel is obviously history. I also like to educate my viewers because I feel like we're learning together, and this headstone is just another example. So Arthur landed in this area around 1887 and did work at the lumber mill as a sawmill setter. In 1908, a device called a lumber steam donkey exploded, killing Arthur and 2 others. So what is a steam donkey? Let's learn about it. Basically, they are steam-powered winches, and the invention in the logging industry allowed loggers to cut and transport trees they originally had 0 chance of moving. And it also allowed loggers to work in hot or cold weather because the process was highly dependent on animals previously. Typically, 3 men were needed to operate the unit, and the units were mobile. Steam-powered engines typically needed water added, and this design was no different. Water must be added at intervals, apparently, as the risk of explosion was always present. See where I'm going with this. I guess if an explosion did occur, the metal skin of the boiler took off like a rocket, and the long stems inside shot out in all these directions. So when these things blew up, they blew up, and they were quite the danger. And I'm guessing that's how Arthur met a very quick death. Sad part of all this was he was married to Mattie Emmons 1 year before the event happened. After Arthur's death, Mattie moved to live with her parents. And here is Carrie Emmons. Born in 1861, somewhere in Pennsylvania. Her husband was actually one of the mill operators in this area back then. However, we were interested in the symbolism on her headstone. A rare find for us seems to be that Eastern Star Order, and I believe it's chapter number 54 here. We saw the symbol on the headstone in Masonic Lafayette. The Eastern Star Order is the sister organization of the Freemasons. Was established in 1850, approved in 1873, and from my understanding was quite open to males and females, in addition to be open to all religious beliefs. So that's kind of cool. And here is Martha Marie Mattie Cody Sheppardson. Oh, long name. Born in Jonesville, Indiana in 1858. But her headstone led me down a rabbit hole of mystery and history. That's what I like about this channel. You discover all these little interesting stories. Martha's father was a Civil War captain, and his name was Button Cody. Mainly served for the Indiana regiments during the Civil War, but the last one noted was the 8th Indiana Cavalry Regiment, and they saw quite a bit of action. But I'm wondering if some of you recognize that last name, Cody. Turns out Martha's first cousin was the famous William Frederick Buffalo Bill Cody. The name George Sheppard on her headstone is obviously her husband, if you could see that below. But George and Martha would first meet when traveling together west in 1889. Martha and George would get married in 1896, both sort of fresh off divorces from my readings, so things were pretty awesome at first in the marriage. However, in 1901, George's oldest son, William, boarded a train to pick up supplies for a business in Hood River him and his brother started up. Reports say that he waved to his friends and family while passing through Bridal Veil and Shepherd's farm. That would be the last time anyone ever saw him. He just vanished, disappeared. It was thought by the local authorities that William was most likely Shanghaied. I know we have viewers from all over the place and even across the world, so that's kind of cool. But for those not familiar with what Shanghai means, in a nutshell, it translates to forcing or kidnapping someone against their will to join a ship by drugging them. In Portland, specifically Portland, Oregon, legend has it that people would get individuals drunk to the point they would pass out, or a trap door would be opened underneath their feet at bars. Perhaps some of you are familiar with the famous Portland Shanghai tunnels. Men awaited below the establishments and captured the drunken men and then took them to ships. And that's where the cliche "never seen again" statement comes from, apparently. William most likely woke up on a foreign cargo ship in the middle of the ocean, unfortunately. This gets a little weirder the more I read about it. William's surviving wife and son were back home in the Portland area. 10 years after William's disappearance, they go missing or never heard from again. So it's the same story. And kind of just dies from there. Couldn't find any more information. In 1903, Maddy here on the headstone dies at the age of 44, 7 years after they married, her and George married. And then George had this memorial erected for her. George would never marry again. No cause of death was found in my searches for her, but reports of her being a cripple came up, so I'm not sure if that was part of it. So in 1913, a historic highway is built by Samuel Lancaster right next to George Sheppard's land, and that would be the historic Columbia River Highway. So as you can imagine, George got offers for insane amounts of money, like get-rich-quick type of deal. Gift shops, roadhouses, basically tourist attractions were all eyeing up this new highway. However, George never gave in for some reason. He sounded like kind of a noble guy. Some say Maddy was still on his mind and he wanted to preserve the beauty of the land. So in 1914, he donated 15 acres to the city of Portland, which is now known as Shepherd's Dell. George never got a dime for something that he could have sold for a substantial amount of money. This park is pretty iconic and can be seen on old postcards. So next time you're driving along the historic Columbia River Highway and doing our typical Oregonian waterfall hopping, as this area is known for, check out Shepherdsdale Bridge and Falls. It's almost tough to tell, but I believe it's the correct headstone. It's of Henry infant son Swain. We did talk about Emily Swain, who is Henry's mother. Henry died at the age of 14 days, so an infant death, obviously. But let's have some positivity for our last story. Henry's big brother was Joseph Carleton Swain, a boxer and apparently known as the Battling Butcher. In the year 1913, Joe would win the middleweight champion of the Pacific Northwest. Alrighty, time for the tour. Again, so sorry on the noise. It is up there with noise. I think it's visited that much. There's not many people buried here, and like I said, the last burial was, was it 1934? Looks like it's still being taken care of, so that's good. One's from 1914. It's just a weird location too, I guess. Ready? Mattie Sheppard. We talked about her story. And what was her first cousin was Buffalo Bill, I believe, we discovered. These ones look like children's headstones, yeah. It's hard to imagine this whole area was covered by blackberries at one point. And then they discovered, what, over 30 headstones. Unmarked one here, just a cross. There's a caged one over here. Open it, but the meat is set up there. Kind of unique. I've never seen that little circular style marking. Maybe this was the last burial here, 1934. I'm trying to remember the exact name. This would be of the doctor that we talked about. That's his wife, though, I believe. Hopefully this will show up. This is the one that has the symbolism, and it'll read AOUW, Ancient Order of the United Workmen. And I'll type some little notes down at the bottom of what that is and put a link, but it's very hard to see, but maybe it's showing up now. That was new for me to see. Flag, and who they served at one time. This one was potentially vandalized at one point, but it's sort of a heart display. Maddy one. Just random little headstones around it, laid around it. So that's kind of it for the tour. It's a small one. Hope you enjoyed it. Beautiful view though. Just very loud. So, sorry again. But anyways, hope you enjoyed the video and learning about Bridal Veil, a little small town. I read it was a ghost town, but there's some houses around here. But if you have any other recommendations for cemeteries to visit in southern Washington or even Oregon, feel free to comment below. Hope you enjoyed the video, and stay safe out there.